April 20th, 1945. Berlin is in ruins. The constant bombardment from the Allied forces has reduced the city to rubble. As I write this, I'm sitting in a dark, damp room within the Führer bunker, the last bastion of the Third Reich. The atmosphere here is tense, the air heavy with despair. Today is the Führer's birthday, but there are no celebrations, only grim determination. I have been assigned as one of Hitler's bodyguards for over 3 years now, and never have I seen him in such a state. His physical health has deteriorated significantly. His hands tremble constantly, and he shuffles more than walks. But his spirit, though darkened, remains unbroken. He speaks of final victories, of holding Berlin against the Red Army, but we all know the truth. The end is near. April 21st, 1945. Today the Führer held a meeting with his inner circle. The bunker was filled with the top military and political leaders. The tension was palpable. The Führer's rage was directed at General Heinrici, who had withdrawn his troops without authorization. The Führer accused him of cowardice and treason. Heinrici tried to explain the impossibility of holding the line, but it was of no use. The atmosphere was icy, and the Führer's mood was volatile. April 22nd, 1945. The Red Army has breached the city's outer defenses. We can hear the distant thunder of artillery growing closer each hour. The Führer is furious, lashing out at his generals, accusing them of betrayal and cowardice. He demands counterattacks that we no longer have the men or equipment to carry out. Morale among the remaining soldiers is abysmal. Today the Führer ordered a last-ditch effort to break the Soviet encirclement. General Wenck's 12th Army is to link up with General Buse's 9th Army and relieve Berlin. It is a hopeless plan, but we cling to any shred of hope, however faint. April 23rd, 1945. The situation grows more desperate by the hour. Food is running low and supplies are scarce. The streets above are filled with rubble and the dead. The few remaining civilians are either hiding in basements or fleeing the city. But there is no safe passage out. The Führer remains in the bunker, rarely leaving his quarters. He paces and mutters to himself, a shadow of the man who once commanded nations. The Führer has started to use boys from the Hitler Youth as soldiers. It is a tragic sight. These young boys, barely old enough to shave, are given rifles and sent to face the Soviet onslaught. Many of them don't last a day. Their eyes are filled with a mixture of fear and blind devotion. They are the last remnants of Hitler's fanatical dream. April 24th, 1945. The noise of battle is incessant now. The Soviets are closing in from all sides. Inside the bunker we live in perpetual twilight, our days and nights blending together. The Führer's aides and secretaries try to maintain a semblance of normalcy, but it is futile. Fear is etched into every face. Today the Führer received a report that Heinrich Himmler, the head of the SS, has been negotiating with the Western Allies. The Führer was incandescent with rage, accusing Himmler of treason. The betrayal cut deep. Himmler had been one of his most trusted associates. April 25th, 1945. Berlin is surrounded. The Soviets have reached the city center and fighting is now street to street. The noise is deafening. The ground shakes with the impact of shells. We remain huddled in the Führer bunker. A maze of underground corridors and rooms deep beneath the Reich Chancellery. The Soviets are using everything they have: tanks, artillery, and wave after wave of infantry. The smell of smoke and burning flesh permeates the air. It's a horrid stench that sticks to your clothes and fills your lungs. The Führer summoned his remaining confidants today. He spoke of loyalty and sacrifice, of the betrayal by his once trusted allies. He made it clear that there would be no surrender. We are to fight to the last man to defend the bunker and our Führer with our lives. April 26th, 1945. The Soviets are now just blocks away. The city is in chaos with fires raging unchecked and bodies lying unburied in the streets. The Führer's mental state is deteriorating. He clings to delusional plans of counterattacks and miracles. We, his bodyguards, stay close, ever vigilant, though we know the futility of our task. The Führer spent hours today with his dog, Blondie. He seemed almost at peace, a brief respite from the madness around us. But soon he was back to his rants, cursing his enemies and planning impossible strategies. Outside, the Red Army's Katyusha rockets screamed through the air before exploding with devastating force. The ground trembles with every impact. April 27th, 1945. The air in the bunker is stifling. We are constantly on edge, every sound making us jump. The Führer called for Josef Goebbels today, and they spent hours together. Goebbels is one of the few who remain unwaveringly loyal. His wife, Magda, and their 6 children have joined us in the bunker. The sight of the children playing innocently in these dire surroundings is heartbreaking. The sound of Soviet tanks rolling through the streets above is a constant reminder of our dire situation. The Red Army's soldiers are relentless, their sheer numbers overwhelming. They fight with a ferocity born of vengeance for the horrors inflicted on their homeland. April 28th, 1945. More bad news. We learned that Benito Mussolini has been captured and executed by Italian partisans. His body was hung in a public square for all to see. The Führer took the news with a grim expression, realizing that his own fate might be similar. He has started talking more about the necessity of taking his own life rather than being captured. The bunker is filled with the smell of sweat, fear, and the ever-present scent of gunpowder. Our rations are dwindling and clean water is scarce. Every trip to the surface for supplies is a perilous journey through hellish landscapes of shattered buildings and bodies. April 29th, 1945. The Führer married Eva Braun last night in a brief, somber ceremony. It was surreal, a moment of personal union amidst the chaos. Today Hitler dictated his last will and political testament, a document filled with accusations and final instructions. We, his bodyguards, signed as witnesses. The Führer's last meal was a simple one, spaghetti with a light sauce. It struck me as odd, such a mundane meal in these final moments. The Soviet troops are just blocks away. We can hear their small arms fire clearly now. The Führer's resolve remains unshaken, but there is an air of resignation about him. He has accepted that the end is imminent. April 30th, 1945. It is over. Today Adolf Hitler and Eva Braun took their own lives. The Führer called us into his study at 2 p.m. He shook our hands, thanked us for our loyalty, and dismissed us. Minutes later, a gunshot echoed through the bunker. We entered the room to find Hitler slumped on the sofa, a pistol in his hand, Eva beside him, having ingested cyanide. Blondie, his beloved dog, had also been poisoned. The sight of the Führer, once a powerful and commanding presence, now lifeless, filled me with a mix of sorrow and anger. His dreams had led us all to this dark end. Their bodies were quickly taken to the garden above and burned, as per Hitler's instructions. The process was harrowing. We carried the bodies up a narrow stairwell, the weight of the moment pressing down on us. The acrid smell of petrol filled the air as we doused them with fuel. I watched as the flames consumed the bodies, a grim testament to the end of an era. The smell of burning flesh was sickening, a stench that will haunt me forever. May 1st, 1945. The Red Army is closing in. The walls of the bunker feel like they are closing in on us. The few remaining officers and staff are making their own plans to escape or surrender. I'm terrified. The Soviets are relentless and their vengeance will be swift and brutal. I do not know what the future holds, but I fear it will be nothing short of a nightmare. As I sit here writing these final words, the echoes of war grow louder and the shadows of the past weigh heavily on my soul. I think of my family, whom I have not seen in years. My wife Maria and our 2 children Hans and Greta are back in our hometown of Munich. I pray they are safe, though news from the outside world is scarce. The war has torn apart so many families, and I fear ours will be no different. I recall the early days of the war, when we believed in victory, when the Führer's words filled us with hope and determination. Now that hope has turned to ashes, much like the ruins of this once great city,